Today, I'm going to give you advice on managing your Stellar Jades so you can make better decisions on who to pull for, especially with upcoming banners in 2.1 and 2.2. I'm going to be showing you some numbers to help you understand your chances at obtaining a character in a given amount of time. This will help you make a decision for yourself on whether to pull when a banner rolls around. One last thing is I'm going to be speaking from a free-to-play perspective because I'm assuming most of you watching this are going to be free-to-play. With that being said, let's begin. The first thing is, the magic number of pulls is 140. In Honkai Star Rail, you are expected to get one featured 5-star every 140 pulls on average. You can confirm this by using a wish calculator. Right here, I'm using a Genshin wish calculator which has the exact same rates as Honkai Star Rail. So here it shows that the average value of a featured 5-star is 140 pulls. So why is 140 total pulls important? Well, taking a look at this, you can see that this graph excludes 1.0, and you get about 103 pulls per patch, or approximately 17.3 pulls per week as a free-to-play. For simplicity, I'm going to use 17 pulls instead of 17.3, so it adds up to 102 pulls per patch. Now keep in mind that this is just an estimation, and it can vary between patches, but it gives us a general idea on the chances of obtaining specific characters. So with that being said, how long does it take to get a limited 5-star on average? So assuming 0 pity with no guarantee, we can plug these numbers in on a graph using the wish calculator. If we're going off of expected number of featured 5-stars, it takes about 8 to 9 weeks of saving as a free-to-play to get a featured 5-star. 17 pulls per week times 8 is approximately 140 pulls. It adds up to 136. This means that if you get a limited 5-star as a free-to-play, you should realistically expect yourself to save for about 8 to 9 weeks before obtaining another. It's definitely possible to obtain it earlier, but this is just going off of the average. So that's the expected value. What about the actual chance of obtaining a limited 5-star? This time, it shows the chance of obtaining a limited 5-star, assuming 0 pity with no guarantee, on a brand new patch. It's important to keep in mind that a banner only lasts 3 weeks. So, for example, let's say a new patch drops and you really want the first phase character. Based off of this graph, you have a 15% chance to obtain that character. And as the patch goes on, if you're trying to get the second half character, you can see that the graph says about 64%, indicated by the 6 bar at 102 pulls. One last thing I want to mention here is by the time you pass a certain number, it becomes increasingly unlikely to not hit a featured 5-star. This number is actually 164, but to make the graph neat, I put 170. Generally speaking, as I mentioned earlier, the expected number is actually 140 pulls, once you factor in things like soft pity and all that other stuff. But you could definitely obtain it earlier or later than expected. It's just the nature of probability. Using the numbers from earlier, it's safe to assume that you should be saving a patch and a half early if you want to guarantee a character as a free-to-play. One banner is 3 weeks, which is half of a standard patch. This means that 8 to 9 weeks is approximately 1.5 patches in length. So, for example, if it's 2.1 in the first half and you're at 0 pity with no guarantee, you're absolutely broke, you can guarantee the character from the second half of 2.2, as this is basically 1.5 patches in terms of length. This is because after 9 weeks, you will have above 164 number I mentioned earlier, which essentially guarantees you a limited 5-star. As always, this is just going off of the expected numbers based on the average, so you can always get a character earlier or later. But I think it's good to plan a realistic number and a realistic probability that's going to happen. So planning around this 140 number is something that you should do as a free-to-play. So knowing all this, my advice for managing your Stellar Jades is to save for about 1 patch prior to a character's release if you're going for them. I think it's a reasonable amount of time where you can save Stellar Jades and also have a high chance of obtaining the character. If you want to guarantee the character, as I mentioned earlier, you have to save for about 8 to 9 weeks. If you're trying to build pity, then you can use this 17 pulls as a breakpoint. This graph, once again, this essentially counts as 1 week worth of pulls as a free-to-play. So then you can assess whether your chances of obtaining someone is feasible or not, using the graph once again. Keep in mind that each banner lasts 3 weeks, and one patch is 6 weeks. So if you're saving for a whole patch, that means you don't pull for 6 weeks. 6 times 17, that's the amount of pulls you're going to get. This graph shows you how likely you are to get a featured 5-star. And finally, one last thing I want to mention is soft pity starts at 74. So if you're close to this number and you want to save for somebody in a future banner, don't go above this number. In the long run, it will help you manage your Stellar Jades so you won't go broke. If you break your pity and you end up getting a character and ruin your guarantee or something like that, as a free-to-play, that's really painful. So 74 is an important number to keep in mind. So anyway, hopefully this video was helpful to you. Hopefully I explained it well. If you have any questions, feel free to comment and I'll try to explain as best as I can. Also, my condolences to anyone who pulls Yanjing. I'll see you later.